So we're here, it's Mother's Day, and what I like to say is that every day is Mother's Day at Speakeasy because we honor the Divine Mother every single day. But today we're also talking about life, death, and change, the courage to change, which are all aspects of the Divine Mother, to know what she knows, to honor what she honors, to understand what she understands, is to make peace with the idea that there will be life and there will be death and there will be a great degree of change between those two poles. The Blessed Mother shows us, and we get to witness the birth of Christ in the manger, and we stand with her at the crucifixion of her son. And through it all, she has impeccable grace, because I guess she has accepted what we are, invited to know, is that motherhood is basically the realm of great change. But before we get to that, I would like to share with you a little bit of the history of what Mother's Day means here in the States. I feel like it's my duty to get to read this piece of writing every Mother's Day, because although it's seen as a day to honor the mother, it's actually a day of honoring peace. That's what it was intended for, which is actually something else that we at Speakeasy really celebrate. Above all else, peace is our goal. So in 1870, Julia Ward Howe, she issued the Mother's Day Proclamation because she had envisioned a day of a solemn council of women from all over the world that they could meet, that they could discuss, much like we're doing here, to achieve the idea of world peace. That was the genesis of this idea. This prominent abolitionist, this feminist, this poet, Julia Ward, was a nurse, and she attended to the wounded during the Civil War, and she had worked with the widows and also the orphans of these soldiers on both sides of the war, realizing that the effects of these wars would go far beyond the killing of soldiers in the battlefield. Like, they affected the whole, human family. So she didn't fight for the petition of Mother's Day to honor mothers, but to have a day that honored and call forth peace. And they called it Mother's Day because so many mothers were so heartbroken over the carnage of their sons and husbands. But the actual goal of Mother's Day was to promote an alliance of different nationalities, an amicable settlement of international questions, and the great and general interest of peace. And so it goes like this, the Mother's Day Proclamation. It says, "Arise then, women of this day, arise all women who have hearts, whether they be baptized of water, of tears. We will say firmly, we will not have great questions decided by irrelevant agencies. Our husbands shall not come to us reeking of carnage for caresses and applause. Our sons shall not be taken to us to unlearn all that we've been able to teach them of charity and of mercy and of patience. We women of one country will be too tender of those of another country to allow our sons to be trained to injure theirs. From the bosom of the devastated earth, a voice goes up, and with our own, and it says, disarm. Disarm. The sword of murder is not the balance of justice. Blood does not wipe out dishonor, nor violence vindicate possession. As men have often forsaken the plow and the anvil at the summons of war, let women now leave all that must be left of home for a great and earnest day of council. Let them first come as women to bewail and commiserate the dead. Let them solemnly take counsel with each other as to the means whereby the great human family can live in peace, each bearing after his own kind the sacred impress, not of Caesar, but of God. In the name of womanhood and of humanity, I earnestly ask that a general council of women without limitation of nationality be appointed and held at some place deemed most convenient and at the earliest period, consisting with its objectives to promote the alliance of different nationalities, the amicable settlement of international questions, and the great and general interest of peace." That's what Mother's Day is. We often hear about what our forefathers wanted, but, this is what our foremothers wanted. They wanted equality. They wanted brotherly love. They wanted peace. And 40 years after this proclamation, what we got was Mother's Day, which was not really the point that Julia was trying to make. Basically, we took her request, we wrapped it in a sentimental day of consumerism and brunch. And don't get me wrong, I love a good brunch just like everybody else. But I think what most of us love more is truth. I invite you to take that proclamation and to do what she invites us to do, to honor the mother, to honor her ways. And the mother's ways is not just to care for your children, but to care for all children. And until we do that, we're not really honoring the mother. So on top of this misinterpretation, the mother, it already gets a bad rap. I mean, a lot of people have mommy issues. The mother, the word is so polluted that it can get confused even with the word smother. And yet it's actually the exact opposite, because at the core of mother, at the core idea of mother, the concept is one who holds space for a concept to reach its full potential while leaving as few fingerprints as possible. So how do we get to this type of mothering? Metaphysically, I see this concept of mothering as the most fertile point in our consciousness. So I think it would benefit you, behoove you to contemplate the mother within you. And no matter if you have children or not, it's this vortex through which all conceptions spring. It's this threshold to the divine. In the Maiden Voyage, which is a program that we run at Speakeasy, we track the archetypes through the chakras, and the mother archetype is actually the heart chakra. And so it's the heart chakra that is the bridge that connects the maiden, the muse, the mogul, the root chakra, the sacral chakra, our more worldly ways, to the mystic, the minister, and the monarch. So our more spiritual ways. So you could say that the mother is the transformative space where all that you've ever loved about the world is now being offered over as a ministry to the divine. We honor this awakened and this internal mother, and we get to see that we are all, each of us, as the mother is, showered with 1,000 concepts. Each of us are very fertile spaces for new concepts. Not only are we fertile and for new concepts, but we're also at choice. So we're at choice as to what we deem deliverable or desirable to deliver. We're creators and we're at choice. These are two undeniable truths. Even in the Garden of Eden, God shows us that there's two trees because she wanted to teach us that we were always at choice, and that she trusts us to make that choice, to stand in that truth, to evaluate your myriad of concepts. It takes some serious skill and also some stamina. Motherhood comes in all shapes and sizes and genders. It's not reserved for women who have birthed or adopted children. We, men, women, big, small, all have this mothering gene. But the traditional role, I will say, of mothering is a little bit different. I mean, I do want to honor those who who delivered babies today, because it is really not for everyone. And just because you have, can give birth doesn't mean that you should. Regardless of whether you have delivered a baby, we are all mothers. But the choice to bring a baby, like your mother made the choice to deliver you, to carry you, and that's a really beautiful thing. I want to say, like, the most essential workers of essential workers is the mother. If you get a kid past the finish line, which all of your moms did, into adulthood, you deserve a ministerial license. I truly believe that. I think you deserve an Oscar, a doctorate. I think you deserve a long ass vacation is what I think you deserve, because being a mom is a real deal. I mean, we surrender so much. We surrender our bodies. I mean, we literally, you look sideways at your body when you're going to give birth to a baby, and you're like, what? I'll never be the same. This baby has broken me for good. It's true. It's bizarre. We surrender our hearts. We just surrender our plans. I remember as an actress, every time I got pregnant, I was like, my career is on hold for at least 9 months. We surrender our last penny, our precious sleep, our freedom, our identity. We're like the Pope, the Pope changes his name. We get our names changed. We become mom or ma. Sometimes we surrender our sanity, and it makes sense that we do. So there's something very majestic and mystical about the act of mothering, the concept, the gestation, the labor, the bloody show, the breaking of water. I mean, these beautiful aspects of bringing a life from life, that in itself is awe-inspiring. And there's 1,000 gospels just right there. I personally have given birth 4 times. The final child I delivered, I delivered myself. Like the midwife said, reach down and grab your baby. And I got to deliver my own baby. She put my name on the birth certificate. And my child's gender was listed as female at the time. And then 13 years later, I was called to assist in delivering my daughter into becoming a son, because my child had realized that they had been misgendered. And, We think labor pain ends with the labor, but man, it is just an initiation for what's to come when you are a mom, because after the birth comes the real mothering, the care, that's not run of the mill care. This is like mama bear care, where mothers would kill for her offspring. And we just gaze down like dope addicts at these sweet little bundles of like pink flesh and vulnerability. And so mothering, God, it's not for the meek, and it's not without its marvels. To mother is to nurture and to nourish. And we're going to get to that a little bit later, because it's important that you do that for yourself before you do it for another. And it's also, the mothering is about protecting and mentoring and teaching and encouraging, and you become an advocate for someone else. And the wonderful thing that happens when you do that is that you realize how underserved you have been for yourself. Like, you ask for things for your kids that you would never ask for yourself. But essentially, no matter how rough your relationship was with your mom, my relationship with my mom was kind of rough, but I healed it. Even after her transition, I feel like I healed this beautiful relationship with my mom. But for the most part, the mom is the sure bet. The mom's the safety zone, the steady Eddie, the springboard, the shoulder to cry on when things go south, the overly enthusiastic standing ovation of one. That is your mother. And if you're a mom, you know that you've gotten out of bed in the middle of the night and you've brought people water and books and stories, and you've threatened small people within a hair of their life. That is the mother. And you've gotten behind the wheel of a car in the middle of the night in your pajamas with sleep in your eyes, driving people places. And half the time you don't even know the people. You don't have a map. You're just driving in the dark. You're an Uber driver. You're a personal chef. You're a cleaning lady. You're a tutor. You're a life coach. And you are not qualified for any of these roles, but it doesn't matter because you're not getting paid. So most of the time you feel completely inadequate and confused and overwhelmed, a day late, a dollar short, riddled with guilt, haunted by extremely active, morbid imaginations. I don't know about you, any moms here, but man, I just always, every day I thought, oh, thank God my kids weren't abducted today. Because I kept thinking these terrible thoughts. And you will do all the things you promised that you wouldn't. You'll cry at the Hallmark commercials. You'll have meltdowns in the middle of an aisle. Oh my God, you won't even recognize yourself. You'll develop an incredible tolerance for holding sticky hands and wiping asses and noses and kissing bruised egos. And you'll be dazzled, like absolutely dazzled by first words. And you'll repeat those first words to anybody who will listen. You'll be dazzled by fingerprint paint and knock-knock jokes. And on our good days, we'll recognize the value of this rare opportunity to get to see the world once more through the eyes of a child. I mean, this is true for grandparents. This is true for aunties and uncles, too. This is true for anyone who spends time with a child. You get to see this rare opportunity to see the world through the innocent eyes of a child. And although it takes great effort and energy, you would gladly spend it twice and every day and always. That's the incredible mystical nature of motherhood. She is this wave that moves from life to death and carries in her course 1,000 forms of change. Because again, she knows that change is the constant. And if the mother doesn't know that, she's in for a heck lot of pain. Lately, whether you're a mother or not, it feels like change is coming faster than we can, fast and furious. Everything around us is changing. It's in motion. Our cities change, our climate changes, our relationships change, our roles, our identities. There's new technologies and languages and, genders. Some things we thought would last forever are already gone in our own lifetimes. And it's dizzying. And let's be honest, it can feel terrifying to navigate that much change. But the Course in Miracles tells us that nothing real can be threatened and nothing unreal exists. And herein lies the peace of God. So just let that land on you. No matter what you're in the business of birthing right now, there's something real that wants to be expressed and experienced through you. And the thing that is real, that cannot be threatened, is love. And all that can be threatened never was to begin with. And that's why change can feel like little deaths, because when something passes, an old identity or a marriage or a belief or a job, or a child grows, and you become an empty nester, there's a grief because we're holding on to something, we're resisting something, and pain comes in the refusal to change, in the refusal to embrace the new. It's not change itself that hurts so much, it's the clinging to what was. So when my child came out as transgender, it wasn't that he changed, not really. He didn't suddenly become someone else. It took some time. He simply told the truth about who he was. I had to change the way I saw him. And let me tell you, that shift, felt disruptive, as shifts do. My mind wanted to debate it or deny it, wanted to demonize myself for not understanding it immediately. I felt fear. I felt grief. I had to face the question, like, who do I need to be in order to accept this? I needed the courage to change the things that I couldn't change, but what I could change was my mind, and it wasn't always easy. When people ask, how many children do you have? I say 4, but I think 5, because there was a daughter that I raised, and she's no longer here. And there's a son that I didn't give birth to. I helped him midwife himself, but I didn't give birth to him, that I got to meet when he was 14. And these are 2 different people. One is the caterpillar, the other one's the butterfly. I love them both the same. It was an honor to have front row seats to such an extravagant and brave metamorphosis. That's what the mom has to do if she's going to be of any worth whatsoever, because your kids will change 1,000 times. And at times it will be scary. It still is, because sometimes I fear, the hatred of the world as my son walks the world. But actually, the actual change wasn't scary. The change was beautiful. The change was neutral, right? The form has changed. The name was changed. The gender was changed. The pronouns changed, but the soul stays the same, because the soul doesn't have a name or a gender or a pronoun. And once I could see that, I understood that it wasn't a loss. It was an unveiling. But the raw ingredients stayed the same. The caterpillar lives in the butterfly. The sand lives in the pearl. The coal lives in the diamond. The seed lives in the stem. And all the raw ingredients of who you are already continue to live on, no matter what the matter looks like. So change, whether welcomed or unwelcomed, is the first step in this hero's journey, or you could say this mother's journey, because she's going on to this journey and she's going to go through these obstacles, and then she's going to return with the elixir. It begins in ordinary, where you're just going along in your ordinary life and your known ways, and you're just floating through your typical day-to-day experience. And then there comes a knock at the door. And at first it can feel like a betrayal. And even if we know, that we're studying Course in Miracles, and we know that everything is gently planned by one who knows our highest good, it can still blow your socks off and leave you twirling in the ethers, these changes, And in these initial moments of this change that is invited in and can no longer, can't be invited out without changing everything. Acceptance in those moments is so far that it can sound like a whole new language. Acceptance isn't the first thing that happens. As much as you know that acceptance is the answer to all of our problems, you also know that you can't just fake acceptance. You can't force acceptance. You don't have to, you don't even have to. Like you shouldn't call pain a blessing if you're still bleeding. Okay. You know what I mean? Like, take the time to anchor down and see what it's about. And in that anchoring down there, then you could maybe for a moment move out of denial and move the dial a little bit towards away from judgment and towards curiosity. Like the first time you look at a pregnancy stick that with a plus on it, and you're like, oh, this happened to me again 3 times with my husband, who was sterile. I was like, wait, what? How is this happening? Apparently he wasn't completely sterile. He had 1 or 2 sperm, and they were pretty good swimmers. So, I mean, just like these things that you don't, are ever going to imagine happening. But in these invitations into a greater awareness of ourselves, we can say, because we've been given these tools, I'm never upset for the reason I think. I'm upset because I think I know better than God. I think this is not right. This is not fair. This does not make sense. This is not cool. I don't want this. I want to go about aborting this before I even invite in the idea. You ever have that experience? You don't even know what it is, and you're so afraid to step into the change that you just decide to negate it. And your ego goes on weaving illusions and defenses against the truth. Don't worry, it will knock again. All of your classrooms are for you, and you can't avoid them. So best case would be to look, wait, and judge not. I know my ego doesn't want to look, wait, and judge not. Change can make us feel betrayed and broken. We want to blame. We want war. We want guilt. We don't want to look, wait, and judge not. But the good news is we have examples. There is another way of approaching these changes because we have the Blessed Mother who showed us the way to navigate life on life's terms. And she did it, and she's known for doing it in this idea of being filled with grace, from the surprising virgin birth of her own and the traumatic death of her son. Like, she stays in this grace, and being in transition, even in the gooiness and even in the darkness, we can still access some grace. The caterpillar enters the chrysalis, and all of us enter into these imitations of change. And in the threshold, we say, oh my God, this is going to kill me. This is going to kill me. I just know it. Don't go in there. You'll never be the same. Don't go in there. Don't go into that room. Avoid, present tense conversations at all costs. Stay in the illusion. Stay in the blur. But that's no way to live. And besides, we can't stop like I said, we can't stop our classrooms, and you can't stop anyone else's classrooms. That would be codependency. We can't make sandcastles stay. You can't hold back the tide. Everything here that can die will die when the script gets flipped on us and the crops are all burned. Here's a recipe that can assist you in moving into the new when the change arrives. Otherwise, you could just burn your feet retreading burnt crops, and that's not going to be very helpful. So, we know actually that burnt crops are essential because the fire of those crops help to warm and welcome and awaken the newness in these seeds that are buried in the dark soil. We can either hold on to the old or we can grow. We need to get to the awareness that we are responsible for, again, accepting those concepts and reseeding a new life. And this is how we seed the new soil and grow the new consciousness, the new crops that are far beyond anything you've been clinging to. So when the crops are burned, and it's hard to imagine, sometimes when you see your crops burn, it's not the end. It's just the beginning of a new crop. So I offer you this acronym, and this is for all mothers, for all the things you were ever ready to mother, for anyone who's ready to mother something, for anyone who's holding a concept in their heart and are like, I need to deliver this and I don't know how to do it. For anyone who's like even hosting a bigger concept, a bigger vision than you could ever even begin to conceive of, this is for you. And it's the word plant, P.L.A.N.T. It's a little recipe that was given to me through spirit. And you can use it to birth anything, a book, a baby, a business. And like all good things, it begins with prayer, If you have a problem, pray. If you do not have a problem, pray. To pray your way to the new day, you got to practice the prayer that ignites an awareness within yourself. I use many different prayers. I use, the prayer that we teach here, which is the affirmative prayer, to recognize that God is, to recognize you're one with it, to affirm your bigger truth, to give thanks for it, knowing it's already done, to release it into the ethers that always say yes. I also use the prayer of Jabez. The God, that you'll bless me indeed, expand my consciousness, that your hand is with me, that you keep me from fear, that I don't cause pain. Prayer is a great way, a smart way to begin everything. And here at Speakeasy, we attempt to begin everything with prayer, and we definitely begin our day with prayer. So that's the first step, is to pray, to learn how to pray. It is such an important tool. I wouldn't begin anything without prayer. The next one is L, listen. Once you pray to God, then you take some time to listen to God. Listen for the directions of God and ask, where would you have me go? What would you have me do? What would you have me say, and to whom? You can tell if someone is exercising these first two steps, because in those first two steps, fear and blame are impossible. You become like a hot knife through butter, because you've allowed yourself to connect with a higher vibe through prayer, and then you've allowed yourself to channel higher good. So PL, pray, listen. A is assess. After pray and listening, meditation and contemplation is listening. We have an assessment. We look with curiosity, not with judgment. We lean into what is. We look at these burnt fields. We go, wait, what's happening here? We look at what's happening around us. We don't rush into label. We say, oh, is this destruction? No, maybe it's resurrection. Oh, is this a punishment? No, maybe it's a preparation. And we allow ourselves to take a true assessment, not with fear, but with the Holy Spirit. We get curious. We ask ourselves, what am I resisting here? Try not to live on the surface of this, go deeper, go beneath the soil. Ask, where did this story come from? As Byron Katie asked us, like, who would I be without these blocks in my soil? Because you got to remove the blocks in the soil for this new, for this new crop to grow. It's just like a coach or a therapist or a financial advisor does. We take a spiritual inventory. Where am I right now with this? What stories am I believing in? What beliefs no longer serve me? What is my part in the burning of this old so I can not bring it into the, development of the new? And how do I take 100% responsibility for my life? In the 12-step program, we call this taking an inventory. It's not about shame. It's about clarity. Most people fear taking an inventory. Most people fear looking at their bank account numbers. We do that in a couple of classes here, but knowledge is power. This is where you get to the knowledge of who you actually are in this moment. There's nothing to be afraid of. So we assess what is working, what is not working. We pay attention then to the subtle shifts of the soil. We don't wait in impatience, but with joyful expectancy. Now, if you have ever prayed and listened and waited, when you do those first two things and then you wait, what you move into is not impatience, but into the witnessing of wonder. If you pray, if you listen, and then you watch, you access this place of listening to the wonder. Have you ever watched the early hours of a seedling? You pressed it to the soil, and then like a week later, it's like this little seedling is now arriving, and it feels like a magic show because it's like this frail little stem and it's making its way through the soil. Or have you ever watched a caterpillar emerge from a chrysalis? My kids and I, once in California, we would have these chrysalises around us at a certain time of year. One time we placed one inside of a jar and we put it out in our backyard. And one day we watched it starting to rattle and then shake, and we gathered around it. And it was this, the awe on my kid's face was like watching somebody meet God. That's what was happening. I have a picture of them staring at this emerging of this butterfly from this chrysalis. And it's extravagant to be able to assess what's truly happening. What's truly happening in every moment is God is birthing. That's what's truly happening if you're willing to see that. So we have pray, we have listen, we have assess, and then we have nurture. Now, this is where mothering can get really awkward and backwards because in the wrong hands, mothering can become martyring instead of mothering, as we attempt to nurture from an empty well. And so this is the step that can be the difference between, weak and wilted crops and flush, vibrant fields. You must learn to nurture yourself. I could talk about this for years on end. The only person you know what's best for is you. When you do what's best for you, you do what's best for everyone around you. That quote is from my sponsor. And that was hard for me to really embody because I was so immersed in doing what was best for everyone at the cost of doing what was best for me. But when I began to turn that dial and just do what was best for me, I became the best version of me for everyone else. That is good math, man. But do you know how to nurture yourself? Do you champion yourself? Do you let yourself know how magnificent you are? Are you stingy? Does it feel or more holy to deny yourself? No, I'm fine. That's no small thing. You cannot give what you do not have. If you want lavish fields, you have to learn how to lavish yourself with love and appreciation. This is not ego. This is simply agreeing with what God has already said. God is mesmerized by you. As a mother oogles her child. It's an unencumbered, unconditional love that is, even as you hear this in your like head right now, it might take you a minute to fully like wrap your mind around it. I know I'm still waking up to it myself. But yesterday I was sharing with a friend that when something goes wrong in my life, and maybe this is true for you, I have a tendency to think I'm wrong instead of something's wrong in my life. And I begin to judge myself in subtle and salacious ways against what I think I'm supposed to be. But yesterday I had this grand awakening. Here's the thing. It might sound very basic to some of you. You might think like, yeah, finally, Maureen, you finally arrived at the party. But I woke up to who Maureen Muldoon has been and is in the world. And I began in a different way than ever before to truly shower her with the type of love and encouragement that I have only ever given to others. And it was a whole new awareness that arrived. I don't think I can ever put that back in the tube. And it bloomed past all of the comparisons and the judgments. And I got to see my contribution to the world as magnificent instead of inadequate. You might also be suffering from this addiction to inadequacy, and I want to wake you up. I want to give you the permission to stop doing that. I can give you 1,000 forms of self-care, but it's not about the form. It's a conscious agreement that when you extend from the divine, you do so as God. And since God is never in competition or comparison with itself, you are free from all of that stagnation just to be your glorious self. And this is what Marianne Williamson has said. Our deepest fear is not our inadequacy. Our deepest fear is our brilliance. It's our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask, who am I to be brilliant and gorgeous and talented and fabulous? Who are you not to be? I know you've all heard this before, but can you really let it anchor in and take root? You're a child of God. You're playing it small serves no one. You're shrinking so that others won't feel secure around you is bullshit. That's not Marianne Williamson words. That's me. We're all meant to shine as children do. We're all meant to shine as children do. We're born to make manifest the glory of God that's within us. It's not within some of us, it's in every single one of you. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give others permission to do the same. But we don't do it for giving other people permission. We do it because that's who we are. We liberate from our fears, and our presence automatically liberates others. So how do you nurture this light, this brilliance? How do you own that? We begin with prayer. Begin with listening, begin with assessing, begin with, from that point, you will have a greater degree of the ability to nurture something. And then finally, we get to the final letter of the word plant, T, trust. Deep within you is everything that is perfect, ready to radiate through you and out into the world. That's the mother. Deep within you is everything that is perfect, ready to extend out from you, out into the world. You have received concepts from God. It has impregnated you. Now just return all of that to God, offer it back to God, take the seeds and plant it in the soil of God, and pray and listen and assess and nurture and trust. The way we demonstrate trust is by being willing to tell the new story. I spent a lot of time in story circles. I have a Monday class that I do online called the Story Salon. People participate if they sign up for a Substack. And so I don't know if you know about that, but it's a great way to rework your stories and to tell the stories you want to tell. This week, we also get people on stage at VoiceBox. I find stories to be so sort of like a demonstration of your faith, because it's so scary to tell the new story. I love it though, and I often say to people I coach, like, get the new story and then go tell people it. Be willing to tell people it without conditions, without, wanting anything from them. Just say, I'm up for this. I'm going to start a church that's going to honor the Divine Mother. Watch me. And when you think of me, think of that. That's all you have to do, whatever it is, whatever your concept is. I'm going to break a glass ceiling. I'm going to deliver a New York bestseller. Just, this is a concept I'm holding. I'm just asking you to midwife it with your consciousness, nothing else. You don't need to do anything. Now, you want to be careful about who you pick as a midwife. You don't want you want people who you would let hold your baby, basically. You want people who you would trust with your baby. So storytelling, it breaks the isolation and it expands the concept. It dismantles shame. Most people don't want to speak their big fat story into the world. They're ashamed. So it breaks that shame. It reminds us that you're not alone, that you actually have a posse of midwives around you that would gladly help you deliver this in consciousness. I also wanted to let you know about the retreats that I'm doing up on Madeline Island, the Mad Ramble retreats. If you have a bigger story that you need help telling, or if you have a story that you don't want to tell, Reverend Elizabeth here, she does Byron Katie. She can help you undo that story. So there's ways that we work around the story. The story for me is the demonstration that comes before the actual form. So I want to close with this. Whatever change you're facing, whether it's grief or transition or a decision that feels like it's pushing you off a cliff, you're not alone. You're not broken. You're being broken open. And something's birthing. The courage to change is already within you. It's not about striving. It's not about pushing. It's about softening. When I gave birth, the third time I went to a practitioner to help me to give birth because I was really bad at it and I was in a lot of pain, and she taught me how to soften. She taught me how to meditate and allow instead of force and fear. So even whatever you're doing, soften around it. It's not about striving harder. It's about softening. It's not about fixing. It's about remembering and allowing. The miracle is waiting just beyond the threshold. So be fine with burning your fields. Leave all that can be left. Step into God's bolder vision for you and birth yourself. And if you're still afraid, it's okay. Just take one step at a time and know that when you rise, we all rise. We rise and we raise each other as holy mothers are known to do. And that's the word.